I'm already hearing a lot of people discounting Penn State's start and saying they always do this, then they're going to fall flat on their face against the big dogs in the Big Ten. And who knows what will happen when they host Ohio State this weekend. But if you've actually watched the Nittany Lions play this year, you can spot a difference. In the past, Penn State's offense struggled to generate explosive plays consistently and almost went into hide-and-seek mode against Michigan and the Buckeyes. And regardless of how well their defense played, eventually that dam would break and they would lose the game outside of Saquon almost saving them one year. But the combo of new offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki and the development of Drew Aller into not only a competent passer down the field, but a confident one, has opened the door for Penn State to finally break through in a big moment. Oh, and that defense is still pretty damn good too. Now, we're searching all through college football to find the most balanced or complete team in all three phases. And even though the schedule hasn't been particularly brutal, the signs that could show Penn State as that team are all around us. Now, James Franklin and the program have been knocking at the door for years, but with this influx of offensive firepower, maybe this year is finally the year. And if you can win the Big Ten, you can win the whole thing. But it starts by exercising the demons this weekend at home against Ohio State. Penn State, it is time. Now, will they do it? Who knows? College football has been drunk as Mr. Leahy this year, but this is the best position they've been in to do it in a very, very long time. Guy who knows a little something about the Big Ten, former Michigan quarterback David Cohn, my brother, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver Blaine Crain. And David, I understand people that don't want to go all in on Penn State. And when you look at the past and the track record, you know, we talked about when college football basically in general got rid of divisions in the conference, maybe nobody benefited more than Penn State not having to play Ohio State and Michigan every year. But after watching this team and this new theme, I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but it did, offensively, dude, I think they got a shot, and I got some questions about Ohio State on the offensive line, man.
Well, look, this is the time. This is the weekend. This is the hump that you've been trying to get over. You've won once in the last 12 meetings, right? And there's no Michigan on the schedule, like you said. There's no Oregon on the schedule. There's no time to make up for it if you were to lose this game, which we've been promised this is the year. And Penn State's a really good football team. They're well coached on both sides of the ball, and they have an identity on both sides of the ball. And you brought up Andy Kotelnicki. He's able to introduce creativity on this offense, I think, without sacrificing the run game, which is really
very
great.
true.
Now, for the Buckeyes, okay, anybody that's watched them the past three games, which are the biggest three games that they've played, of course you have concerns on both sides of the football. 64 rushing yards against Nebraska. I mean, no football team that has Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins in the same backfield should be rushing for 64 yards.
Agreed.
And they've given up triple-digit rush yards in each of those three games. But I keep coming back to the Oregon game. I mean, Oregon had to win third down, they had to win passing yards, they had to win rushing yards, they had to win the penalty battle, they had to win the turnover battle 2-0 and they had to run a 12th guy out there and get an NCAA rule change just to beat the Buckeyes by 1 point at home. I still think this is a really good football team that we're talking about here. And, you know, they're not going to be able to big play their way to a win against Penn State. Not that the Buckeyes won't hit some big plays, they always do, but at some point, one of these teams is going to have to control the line of scrimmage. And right now, even with the news that Drew Aller sounds like he's going to be a game time decision, or at least Penn State's not going to reveal that information until game time, I'm going to go with the Buckeyes to get a win on the road this weekend.
Yeah, and I'd be shocked if he didn't play, and I think it's smart for Penn State not to, you know, let the opponent know, is the starting quarterback going to be
Fair
there?
enough.
You steal practice time. I would just be shocked if he didn't play. Is this, and Blaine, I want to get to you in a moment, though, but David, this one's kind of personal to you. Does this feel like this could be Penn State's kind of Michigan moment that turned the tide for Michigan under Harbaugh? I mean, it wasn't that long ago. They walked into Jim Harbaugh's office and said, we're going to need some of that money back because you're not doing, at least from a rivalry standpoint, what we expected. And now we've seen the way that pendulum swung. It's almost on the other foot. Could this be Penn State's Michigan moment to try and flip the script and say, you know what? It took us a while. It took Dan Lanning a while to win that big game. Hell, it's taken Lane Kiffin a really, really long time to win that massive game. maybe this year, this could be the team for James.
It could be. Obviously, Jim Harbaugh proved that it can be done. You can lose 5, 6, 7 of these things in a row and turn the tide. It feels almost even a little bit more like Kirby Smart in Georgia against that Alabama team 3 years ago. Remember, just couldn't quite get over that hump, losing in the SEC championship, losing in national championships, and then finally, and we said we have to see it with our own eyes, and finally we did see it with our own eyes, and that's sort of what catapulted Kirby Smart in Georgia to back-to-back national championships.
Very true. Blaine, I want to get to Ohio State because you'd be crazy to not look at this roster and be like, this is one of the best teams in college football. I mean, it's $20 million in the NIL fund to put this roster together. But when I look at who Ohio State's played, it's amazing to me. People will down Penn State, say we haven't played anybody you really don't know. I look at Ohio State, the one team you played that you couldn't just out-talent was Oregon. And yes, Oregon had to catch some breaks. David, I agree with you 100%. They hit that missile surprise onside kick they got, but they also made a couple mistakes. When you look at Ohio State was able to take advantage, and I think Oregon left some points out on the board. But when I watch Ohio State's offensive line, and I look at what Penn State has, and you brought up the injuries on Ohio State's offensive line, going into this game, I like Will Howard. He made some big throws late against Nebraska, but if they can't run the ball, Penn State can keep you under 13 points. They can keep this roster under 13 points to me.
Woo, the whole game?
Whole game.
That would be surprising to me if Ohio State doesn't score 14 points. I'll tell you that right now.
Would be? I'm not saying it'd be surprising. I wouldn't be shocked if that happened.
Okay, somewhat. Yeah, I guess I can somewhat see that. But the first thing I want to say, before we even dive into this game, it's an absolute travesty and a robbery that this game is played on 12 o'clock on Saturday and not at night.
I agree.
It's an absolute robbery. One of the coolest things in college football is a whiteout Penn State football game. Someone play Mo Bamba, please. It's a robbery to Penn State, and it's a robbery to college football fans that we get to miss out on that experience. What you brought up, and I think it is key. One, Drew Aller's health in this is very important to me, whether it's a leg strain or whatever it is. But the one thing I can look at and see, well, is he going to play or not, is the spread. I don't think the spread would be at 3.5, 4.5 right now if Drew Aller wasn't playing.
I think it'd be closer to 6.
I think so too. It'd probably be a touchdown, or even it'd go up a lot more than that. But it's all about matchups. And you brought up the injuries for the Ohio State. You had a tackle go down in the Oregon game. I believe it was Josh Simmons, your left tackle. Your replacement tackle, who came in and did not look great, already went down in that Nebraska game. And you're about to go up against a Penn State defensive line. From a talent standpoint, can match up with you. Abdul Carter is going to be a first-round defensive end pick. They have a couple guys, especially in the box. They match up a lot like Nebraska.
They can fight.
Well, Nebraska in the box is one of the best, the best interior linemen in the Big Ten. And right now, Penn State matches up the same way. So a lot of it's going to come down to one, quarterback health, and two, how much does Chip Kelly and Ryan Day trust Will Howard at quarterback to go win them a football game? They trust him in the Oregon game. I think they'll trust him in this football game, but I wouldn't be surprised. Look at the lines, look where it goes, and that'll tell you a lot about Drew Aller's health.
And we'll keep updating the Drew Aller situation throughout the week. Not like they're going to tell us anything, but when you look at the spread, that's kind of your best indicator of who's going to play and who's not. When I want to go back to you talking about Ohio State and Nebraska's ability to kind of stunt the run. I think, David, when I look at this game, Penn State doesn't have to rob Peter to pay Paul and have to put extra bodies in the box, whether it's against light personnel, whether it's against heavy personnel, to be able to not totally shut down the run, but stop the run enough where you can be even. Because when I look at Ohio State and I see Igbuka, right, and I see Jeremiah, and all these guys they got on the outside that can make the big play down the field, the more I can live in a too-high look, or the more I can live in I don't need to funnel resources to the box and catch us skinny on the outside, the more plays Ohio State's going to methodically have to go down the field, which puts them, more risk to get penalties on the road. Maybe you start in a 1st and 15 when you're not used to it. And then also, when you look at the RPO game of what Chip Kelly and Ohio State wants to do, you can have an answer for every area of conflict, because the more you put into one bucket, the more it opens up the other bucket. Obviously, spacing is huge, but if Penn State can maintain up front without having to funnel those resources, I think they've got a shot to score enough points to win this game. It may not be pretty. Ohio State's pretty damn good on defense, but that's the separation. You brought up creativity, and I think sometimes people confuse what creativity is from a play calling standpoint. It's not just trick plays. It's not just running reverses or flea flickers or even throwback screens. It is being able to take shots in different levels of the field throughout the game and any down and any combination to play off what you've done before. Can you just talk for a second about creativity doesn't mean trick. It just means we're using every blade of grass, and we can do it in any situation.
You talk about blade of grass. It's also lining up your tight end at 6 different positions. I think I heard that for Tyler Warren. I mean, we broke him down on Huddle Up when he had the trick play and he was at center, but it goes beyond that. This guy's getting quarterback sneaks. He's catching slants and screen passes.
Selling hot dogs.
I think I heard a stat where he lined up at 6 different positions. So, yeah, they're going to need every bit of that going in this game to beat the Buckeyes at home. But I'm so glad you brought up, what they plan to do, what the Buckeyes plan to do on offense, because it's a really important point. And it's not just the true RPO game with Chip Kelly. Sometimes it's the now screens and the tunnel screens.
Yes.
How many times have we seen that? One of these wide receivers, and they're trying to supplement some of that lack of production on the offensive line. Now screen right now to our best players at wide receiver.
And who just did that
And they take off for 64 yards.
Oregon did that to Ohio State.
Oregon really does it better than any team in the country. But I'm glad you brought up the point because I'm so excited to see for the Buckeyes on offense, are they going to run to pass or are they going to pass to run? Are they going to feel the need to get those playmaking wide receivers the football early to set up their run, which historically hasn't been the case because I've seen Buckeye teams that they can run the ball so well, we're going to run to pass to those guys. Will that be able to create that spin down, break the 2 safety look for Penn State?
And before we move on, it's a great point. But Blaine, before we move on, if you're Ohio State, there's kind of 2 different thoughts here, and they're somewhat conflicting. One is, hey, we're going to test the run early to see if we can run it. But what happens in the first couple drives, the first 2 to 3 drives, if you do run it on first down and you run it on second down and you're living in 3rd and 7, that front 7 for Penn State is going to be ready to hunt. They're going to be ready to hunt. I don't think you can survive with Will Howard over a 4-quarter period in 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9s. Not that he can't create every now and then, but to ask him to make those throws on passing downs into situations where Penn State may be running 2-man. They may be running their mixed coverage. You're getting your exotic looks. Or do you do what David said and say, listen, we'll run it against the wall a couple times, but why not just spit out the bubble screen and we'll live in 2nd and 6 and 3rd and 3?
Well, look, I don't think any quarterback wants to live in 3rd and 7.
Well, some can get away with it. Cam Ward can get away with it.
Yeah, he can get away with it. I guess he keeps getting away with it. Sooner or later, it's going to catch up with him. But right now, if I'm Ohio State, the one thing I would run RPOs to death. I really would. I just want to give the option of spitting out to my best players, whether whatever receiver I want to, can give it to my one of the, if not the best tandem of backs in the country. And I think Will Howard's feet will be huge in this game. 2 things I'm looking for to probably end up winning the football game. 1, who has the most explosive plays? Right now, Penn State has been very good, whether that's Tyler Warren or both their backs of hitting explosive plays this year. And 2, who wins the turnovers? And how can Will Howard use his legs? You bring up 3rd down. Those 3rd and 5 and plus in big moments, if Will Howard can use his legs to escape and create, then you start to like what Ohio State does. But right now, if I'm Ohio State, I'm not walking into this game thinking I have to do this. I'm going to call the plays off the personnel I'm getting shown on defense. And my best thing I can do, the avenue I need to take, is putting my best players in the best situation in space.
Well, we want to know what you think. What's the poll today? Hit them with the poll real quick.
Who wins Saturday, Penn State or Ohio State?
Also, one thing on Will Howard running, I just looked this up. Will Howard has 91 rushing yards on the year, 2.2 average. Is that surprising to anyone?
It's surprising to me because you would think with the backs that they have and the ability to even spit the ball out on the RPO that Will Howard would have more access to run or get more one-on-one looks where he's able to make a guy miss or run a guy over. I'm going to be honest with you. When it's 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, at least it seemed to me, and y'all can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, every time Will Howard keeps it, they don't get it. It would be very hard for me, even with the questions we have about the offensive line, on 4th and 1 to not turn around and hand the ball off to Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins. Seems like every time Will Howard has kept it, that there's been a problem and they haven't got it. Maybe wrong in that overall. It may be closer to 50-50, but just from seeing it from the outside in, that's what it looked like to me. Hey, YouTube, appreciate you guys hopping in. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, turn that notification bell on, and like a video or 2. Doesn't take a lot of effort.